Philip Stoten from My House to Yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. I am joined this morning by Greg Bradfield, who is the Vice President and General Manager for Aerospace and Defense Markets at Spartronics. Greg, thanks for joining me. Pleasure to talk to you today. Let's kick off with a quick introduction to you. Give me your background and kind of what led you to Spartronics.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you. I've been in the military, aerospace, and defense industry for a little over 30 years now. Started at a small military-based semiconductor packaging plant and quickly moved through some primes, including some satellite manufacturers and some weapon manufacturers. Over time, I've gravitated back towards the supply base. And I had an opportunity to join a company named Innovar, which is in Utah, in the United States. And Innovar was purchased by Spartronics just in September of 2021, excuse me. I was formerly this Chief Operating Officer of Innovar, and I transitioned into this role at Spartronics.
Okay, very good. And tell me a bit about what Spartronics A&D operation looks like and perhaps how that's changed since you arrived.
Well, it's been a short time, so there hasn't been a ton of change, but Spartronics is a relatively new company. We've been around for roughly 3 years. We have 9 locations around the world. 7 of them are in the United States. About 45% of our portfolio is aerospace and defense customers or products. So it's the largest piece of Spartronics and represents the largest growth path for us, at least at this time. We're seeing growth in all of our segments, them being aerospace and defense, medical, and industrial products. But I have the pleasure of leading the A&D side, which is almost exclusively inside the United States, with some growth outside, but for the most part, it's domestic inside the U.S.
Yeah, and I guess that's all covered by ITAR, isn't it?
For the most part, there are some exceptions, but the majority is ITAR controlled, yes.
Yeah. So the facilities, I guess, are generally ITAR. And how is the A&D market? You talk about there being some growth there. What are the trajectories over recent times, and what does that look like going forwards?
Well, for A&D specifically, as most of your viewers will probably recognize, there's a lot of opportunity to grow the A&D footprint in the world. There's certainly a lot of demand based on geopolitical concerns, and we get a lot of interest from particularly U.S. and British customers for our business. And a lot of the traditional weapons or aerospace platforms that we provide products into just continue to grow. They continue to be funded. They continue to be funded at higher levels, and our growth trajectory typically follows the U.S. Department of Defense budget. However, as we acquire new customers, we can grow at a faster rate.
Yeah. And just going back to the acquisition of Innovar, how much of Innovar's business was A&D when they were acquired?
About 2/3.
Okay, so a similar proportion.
Yes, it was a very complementary connection between Spartronics and Innovar. Very complementary customer portfolio as well as business mix.
Yeah, and what's driving trends? We obviously there's a lot of talk about supply chain security and just security, national security generally. You mentioned geopolitical issues. Are they the key things driving growth there? Is it government stimulus? Is it a way of pushing money back into the economy? What's the main drivers for the growth in the A&D sector?
I would personally not attribute the growth to any kind of stimulus. At least the stimulus plans that have been coming out recently related to health or inflation-related items.
Yeah.
Most of the growth just comes from organic growth coming out of existing platforms. We do see some new platforms, but those usually are in the minority when it comes to growth. By the time a new platform hits us, it's many years down in development and maturity.
Yeah. And post the innovation, the acquisition of Innovar, are there more acquisitions in the future? Is that part of the growth strategy, or is it a more organic strategy within Spartronics to grow your segment?
It's both. Spartronics is always has been and will remain opportunistic. If there's a good for our business, we certainly would consider that, but we're not singularly focused on inorganic growth. Most of our growth comes from organic or existing customer channels. But if there was an acquisition that made sense for us, we would certainly consider that. But we aren't actively pursuing something, and we don't have a target to do an acquisition at any time frame.
Yeah, no, I think with acquisitions, particularly at the moment and the change in the market, it's very important to be opportunistic rather than just saying, hey, we've got to acquire something within this quarter, because it's just not that simple.
Well, with Spartronics, I'm sorry,
yes.
with Spartronics, we did 2 acquisitions in 2021. So
Right.
Innovar being one of them. So we are eating what we obtained and
What you acquired. Yeah, absolutely. It takes some time, doesn't it? And you've got a new facility, you've opened some centers of excellence. Tell me a bit about the footprint and how that's grown recently.
Well, we are about to open up a very large facility in Vietnam.
Okay.
And that facility will do both medical, industrial, and commercial aerospace work.
Right.
And when I referenced earlier that some is ITAR, some is not, certainly the ITAR work will not go over there, but
of course
we do have some commercial products that will be a very nice fit over in Vietnam. We're going to be opening in the fall, and we're going to add about 200,000 square feet to our existing portfolio over there in a brand new LEED certified building that we completely built from the ground up, and we're very excited about that. And we have quite a list of customers that are anxious to go over and visit a brand new facility in Vietnam. So that's our newest expansion of our footprint. We have a nice facility down in Mexico, in Tecate as well, that doesn't do A&D work, but is a relatively new business for us that does industrial work. And then inside the United States, we have 7 facilities, as I mentioned earlier. Innovar, Heritage Innovar, which is now Spartronics Logan, is the newest acquisition to the US-based portfolio. And it's a relatively new facility. It's roughly 5 years old. Again, was built from the ground up. So we have a number of facilities that are brand new or relatively new compared to some heritage businesses. And we've grown the footprint over the last couple of years pretty significantly as far as manufacturing square footage with the acquisitions and with the new construction.
Yeah, what I'm curious about, Greg, is when I think about EMS, I normally think of, particularly in the US, I think of a relatively high mix, relatively modest volumes, lots of different customers, lots of different markets. When you're focused 70% on one market, and this market in particular, does that change the complexion of the company? What does the EMS need to look like to be appealing in this market, and what are the customers' expectations that maybe differ from other markets?
Well, I think our customers come to us particularly with a couple specific needs. We're seen as a tier 3/tier 2 provider in the EMS range. We're not competing head to head with for say a Foxconn. We don't go after the business in commercial electronics, so to speak, with millions of in the volume count, millions a year of a single SKU. That's not our business, and our clients tend to not want that. They want to come for pretty high touch when it comes to the relationship. Yeah. They want a lot of process options. They want to be able to change process by their direction, or have special processing that we accommodate at a lower volume. They want to make a lot of changes. We do a lot of engineering change management for our clients, sometimes physically on the hardware itself, and sometimes just in the configuration. Yeah. So we provide that service, and the processes that we use to support that in an A&D architecture, particularly with all the traceability and and process control that they're looking for usually is applied to much smaller volumes.
Yeah.
And that's really what we find our clients come looking for specifically, because some of the larger tier ones, so to speak, even though they build fantastic products and have great processes and equipment, don't like that kind of variability and want to build something many times over instead of many things in small volumes. So we do pride ourselves being a high mix, low volume company, low to medium volume. We certainly don't want ultra low, but we specialize there, and we find that our clients really like that personalized custom service when they come to us. They can get consistency, but they get a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and you mentioned high touch, and I think that's really interesting. And that's I think that's an assumption I would make, and one would make anyway. But does that extend into the different areas of the product life cycle? Do you find in the A&D sector you're more or less involved in the design side, in the kind of aftermarket support side? Does it extend the vertical integration, or is it, are they very much, we've got processes for this design, we do it our way, take our design, don't mess with it, and get it done?
No, actually, it's throughout the life cycle. We find that most clients come to us with a design, and they're not, for the most part, they're not looking for us to redesign their product, but what they're looking for is a design for manufacturing approach and expertise to make their designs more producible or to yield higher. Either design for test or design for producibility or design for manufacturing. We get asked for those services pretty regularly. Then, of course, there's the middle part, which is most of our business, where we actually go build it. And then we do have a fair amount of aftermarket repair or depot or aftermarket support work, obsolescence management. A lot of these things that come in after the product is maybe sunsetting or has already been delivered to their clients. We have a number of clients that they operate a depot out of our locations, and their customers just return the product to us. We either upgrade or repair or test, recertify, and ship it straight back. And our clients just process an invoice. So we'll provide those services as well. So it's all three segments of that value stream, and we're happy to do all three.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think having those integrated in one vendor gives the maximum amount of value to the customer. I want to talk about some of the challenges and disruptions that have been going on in the electronic industry and how they're impacting this segment and how they're impacting you. Before I ask you what you think the challenges are, the kind of I guess largest one impacting most people is component shortages. One would think, at least at a government level, but maybe not at a manufacturing level, there is some influence on getting capacity into the defense sector. My anecdotal evidence is that component shortages have eased a little generally, have eased a little bit more perhaps in the automotive sector. How do they look in the A&D sector?
I think what you described is pretty accurate. I think that we're sensing a little bit of ease or a little bit of relief. I don't think it's over yet. And no. I think it's got a little bit more time to go. Our observation is, some of the larger consumers of components are getting a little bit more relief than perhaps a smaller company like ours. If you're a automobile manufacturer, I think there's plenty of leverage there compared to most companies. And let's remember, the industry, between the differences between A&D products and automotive products when it comes to reliability and the quality of those components that we all order, the gap between those has really narrowed over the past couple of decades. So a lot of times we hear clients come in from defense or commercial aerospace, and they're happy with an automotive level part. So it's really quite reliable and it's proven out. So sometimes we are competing for the same part from the same factory with larger consumers. But we are seeing some relief, and in some cases, we get surprised every day with another breakthrough, and that's very nice. We also still get some negative surprises of some push outs
Yeah.
here and there. But seems to have tipped a little bit more where, a year ago it was everything's being pushed out. Now it's
Yeah.
a little bit more of a blend. So we're hopeful that it's coming to an end soon.
So Greg, less people knocking on your door with that as their main problem than perhaps a couple of months ago.
Maybe our customers are still quite impatient for delivery, and we understand and respect that, and we'd like all of our raw materials sooner as well. So we still have some challenges, but for the most part, it's getting better.
Yeah, and the shortage everybody talks about following component shortages is a talent shortage, a labor shortage. How's that impacting you, particularly in the US, but also I guess in Mexico and Vietnam? What's the recruitment and retention like there?
It is a challenge. It has been for the last couple of years, but that's another area where we are experiencing a turn. It's feeling better. We're getting more applicants for jobs, more good qualified applicants for jobs across our whole portfolio. We still see a shortage of talent today. There's a lot of, everybody who's a stellar employee has lots of options. And we have great employees at Spartronics. We'd love some more. And we have openings just like everybody else. I think there's still it's a job hoppers market, so to speak, in some of our locations. But it seems to be loosening up a little bit. We're having more luck lately, and we're getting encouraged by the volume of applicants we're seeing and the loyalty of our employees. We're not seeing as much turnover as we were when the market was very hot. A year ago, we saw lots of people being opportunistic, and that's really died down quite a bit.
Yeah, I think I think a bit of nervousness in the general economy normally slows down a bit of job hopping and makes people, I guess, look for a bit more security. What about in those other locations? How are things in Mexico?
Mexico has always been a pretty interesting market for labor. We've never really had a challenge getting people and applicants, but in Mexico, there has, at least our experience has been, there has a little bit more higher than turnover than we experience in most of our A&D locations. It hasn't been a problem, but we've just learned to manage it, and that's been pretty steady state. It hasn't really changed much. We've been pretty happy with the folks that we have as applicants and employees down in Mexico. Some very hardworking people, very smart folks. We have a very good team down there, and usually when we have openings, we have lots of options.
Yeah, and you will have researched it when you moved into Vietnam, but my sense is there's a high level of graduate talent available there, and a good amount of operator talent as well.
Yeah, I agree. All up and down the spectrum of talent in Vietnam is very strong. We have an outstanding vice president and general manager in Vietnam that is very well connected out there politically and in the workforce, and he and his team do an outstanding job keeping that plant running at full speed, and he's really effective at working with the local political offices as well as employment agencies, and he really has a good process out there.
Yeah. So shortages of components, shortages of talent. What other challenges are you seeing in the sector at the moment?
Well, those are certainly two big ones. Those are really what we have been working on these last couple of years. The health crisis that it feels like we're coming out of a little bit with COVID seems to have died down. So the safety of our employees is really, although it's always our number one focus, really seems to have subsided just a little bit. We still are watchful to make sure that our employees are safe, but we're cautiously optimistic that that's kind of leveled out. So that was probably the third big one that we were managing these last few years. As far as CapEx and talent and backlog and opportunities to grow and people and all that, it feels like we're getting back to a little bit of a normal rhythm in industry. We could always use a few more parts, but
Yeah.
For now, we're getting back to focusing on growth and improving our processes and continuing
Yeah.
improving our.
Yeah, I think post the I guess post the height of the pandemic, I think a lot of the switch has moved from employee health to employee well-being, and we're just, you know, thinking hard about the burnout and the you know, the potential stress and anxiety people have been through, and that needs to be a big part of the way you manage your team, but also that becomes part of recruitment and retention. You know, people.
Sure.
You need people to want to work for Spartronics, and knowing that that's taken care of becomes really important.
I think now the environment is shifting from playing defense to playing offense, you know, and manageable growth, so it doesn't get into, you know, unmanageable growth is the key. And I think that's where I think we see industry starting to shift. There's a tremendous amount of interest from the A&D market, as well as our medical market. There's quite a bit of interest in growth and new customers coming and wanting to bring new work. So it's a new set of challenges as far as, you know, instead of playing defense, going on offense.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that starting to pick up.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree there. And I think there's a change in the complexion. And I think it's for OEM, they're starting to think much more about the cultural fit and what kind of a brand of EMS they want to be working with. And I think, you know, that needs to be reflected in the way EMS companies behave, but also how they promote themselves. You know, we've got a new generation of consumers that are perhaps a little bit more stakeholder rather than stockholder aware, care a bit more about the environment, about the compliance and all those kind of things, and we have to take those into account. Last thing I just wanted to touch on was kind of shifts in technology. You're in a market where your end user technology is obviously moving reasonably quickly, but also your manufacturing technology continues to move. Speak a little bit to where we are in terms of technology, both from a product and a manufacturing point of view.
So the product perspective, we still have plenty of clients that are building heritage technology. So it's not all, you know, the latest version of an iPhone kind of cutting edge, but we are seeing, at least in A&D, you know, new designs and new programs coming forward with new technology that is pushing the envelope a little bit on the manufacturing technology. Yeah. But that's where we find, you know, working with clients right up front, particularly on the design for manufacturing or design for producibility or yield perspective, really helps, because they will, you know, design something that, you know, perhaps the existing SMT line can't accommodate. There's pitches that are too close, or so we work a lot with our clients up front to enable their designs in a producible way. So and a lot of the platform manufacturers are constantly having a new generation of equipment, and that's exciting to keep up with. And as we see those opportunities, we continue to invest in the next generation of technology factories. So you kind of have to, you know, respect the past and accommodate that, you know, and sometimes the past is only 5 years old, while embracing the new tech that's coming. Yeah. And it is a balance. And but we find that most of our clients, when they find something that works, particularly in A&D, they stick with it. Yeah. So they don't like to change the design. So no, I absolutely agree. It's interesting what you're saying, because I think, you know, if Apple was in the A&D sector, they'd still be supporting the iPod with the click wheel, and you know, you'd still be having to figure that out. So you know, you've got state of the art at one end where you're really on the bleeding edge, and you've got to work closely with your vendors and your equipment suppliers to make sure you can accommodate that. And you've also got to make sure that you've still got the equipment for all the legacy or heritage products to you know, to make sure that they're supported in the market. So it's a challenging and exciting mix. It is. We still get plenty of requests for through-hole boards. So,
Yeah, of
you
course.
know, sometimes those things just don't die because they work well.
Well,
So,
absolutely. It's always, I think it's always the case, and I think it's this peak of hype that everybody thinks a new technology is going to entirely eradicate the technology it's improved upon, and often it takes a chunk of it, but there's always a bit that remains where stuff just works well, doesn't it? Sometimes.
always a place for something that just works. Right.
Yeah, it's the way. Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Continued success. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, let's talk again soon. Thank you.
Yes, please. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.